Hey guys, welcome to How Would You Edit This Image? I have an image today was sent over by Brittany. This was sent over in JPEG format. You can see it's got 5 subjects in it. First off, I want to over it and see what is it that I want to happen with this edit. What is it I want to try to make better? Today I'm just going to use Photoshop for this image. And a couple things I noticed at first. One is that my subjects are really close to this background, which is okay. I do try to pull my subjects out. What's most noticeable to me is that the bark of this tree right here is where the focus is. So focus was missed a little bit from the subjects, and the most clear thing in the image here is the bark on this tree. And so another thing I notice is that they're in some uneven light, so there's some splotchy, shady light on all of their faces, and they blend in with their background. And so I think that what I would want to accomplish with this image is to get rid of some of the clarity in the background, add some sharpening to my subjects, brighten and even the light up on my subjects, and make them pop from that background. So usually when you look at an image, the brightest thing in the image and the clearest thing in the image, that's where your eyes just naturally go. And so you want to notice these subjects before anything else. And so that's what we're going to do. A couple things that we can do to try to separate the subjects from the background and make them pop a little bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is copy my background layer so that we're always working on a copy and not on the original layer itself. That way it's easier to fix if we have to. If something doesn't go as planned, we can always start over because we haven't really touched our background layer. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my subjects. And so Photoshop has made this as easiest as it's ever been in the past. You just go to your selection tool over here, you click on it, it pops up a little box at the top of the screen. It says select subjects. It's never been easier. This is not something that Photoshop has always had. So if you're new to Photoshop, this is actually quite amazing, something that they've come up with. And actually though, when you have multiple subjects, or when you have a subject that kind of blends in with their background, the selection tool that the computer uses can get a little confused. And so you do have to the computer has done its selecting. I'm just going to use my plus and minus selection tools, just clean up some of the little edges, sometimes around necks and noses, sometimes around hats, in between legs, sometimes around hair, things like that. There can just be a little bit of space where the computer just wasn't quite sure where your subject and your background were coming together, and so it has to make a selection and it just picks one. So it just makes it a lot easier if you're going to be using layers that you go ahead and fix this right in the beginning, because it only gets harder later on. And so that's what we're doing, is just cleaning up some of these little areas that are supposed to be background that the computer just didn't quite recognize. So once we have them selected and we're happy this is where our subjects are, I think this is probably her hair up here. Oh, let's get close to the hat there. And you may have to go back and forth. You may have to do a few tweaks to make sure it's getting the subjects as you want them gotten. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to make a layer with the selection that we've made, and this keeps you from losing your selection. It'll save it for you. And we'll increase the exposure a little bit on our subjects here. We do want them to be brighter. We do want them to pop out a little more than they are, so we'll just increase a little bit. We'll do that to 0.33. So another thing we want to do is to go ahead and start decreasing where our focus goes on our eyes. And my focus goes to this tree because it's very in focus. So I'm going to create a background layer. I'm going to select Control and then selecting my mask. It's going to bring back what I've already selected, which is my subjects. I'm going to Created a contrast layer, and I'm going to invert the mask, the selection on that, so that it will be a layer for the background and not for the subjects. Going to subtract contrast from the background, so maybe -20. And I'm going to select the background layer again, and I'm going to come down here to my copy layer, and I think that I'm going to add a filter, and so I'm probably going to go in to my filters, to my blur filters, and maybe add just a little bit of lens blur. And this can be something very slight. It's just to decrease the amount of sharpness that's in that background layer, so that when we sharpen our subjects, we can clearly see that that's what's supposed to be in focus and not what's in the background. What that did was just add some blur. Back here, we want it very subtle. Any blurring that you want to do to your background, ideally you want to do it in camera. You want to do it with your different camera settings and your different lens abilities. You don't want to add too much of a blur in Photoshop, because it can be quite noticeable. And so ideally it's what you do in the camera, but when you have subjects that are blending into your background, you definitely want to add some separation. And so as you can see, we added some blur, and this just made it so that this tree is no longer what's in focus, and you can pay more attention to these subjects. And so next, what I'm going to do is select my background again, and I'm going to create a curves layer. With that curves layer, I'm going to bring the shadows down. So in the middle of your curves layer, if you're not familiar, I would play around with curves layers and get to be more familiar with it. But your center of your curves layer here is actually your shadows. And so I'm going to bring down some of the shadows in the background here. So going to select my background layer again, and I'm going to create an exposure layer, and this is so I can offset just a tiny bit over to the right here, my background, and you can see that that added a little bit of a matte finish to the background, and another way it just keeps those subjects this focus. So I'm going to select my subjects, and I'm going to add another contrast layer, this one for the subject. Subtracted some of the contrast from the background, but I'm actually going to give our subjects maybe 20. And I'm going to select them again, and I'm going to do a curves layer for them. By increasing the shadows on the curves, this will help to bring up some of the light. You can see there's still a lot of shadow on their faces, a lot of blotchy light. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit. It's going to brighten them up a little bit, and it might even out slightly some of those shadowed lights. And as you can see already, you've got the brighter, clearer, more in focus subjects, and you've got the background that we've successfully kind of separated or caused a separation between the two. Another thing I want to do always is clarify the eyes. And I'm maybe going to add a little bit of sharpness to their faces as well. So I'm back here on the copy layer, and there's a lot of ways you can add sharpness to your subjects. These are not incredibly out of focus or anything, so I think what I'm going to do is just grab this little sharpness tool over here, and just on a very light strength, I'm just going to add a little bit of sharpness over each of the faces and features. Nothing too noticeable. I just want to make sure that these are what is most in focus. And so when you're doing portraiture, you want to make sure that your focus and your attention goes right to your subject's eyes. It just really helps bring a connection to your subjects in a portraiture, and it just it really just gives some character and some personality to your portraits. Your eyes are really important. So I'm going to go back to my copy layer here, And I think that I'm going to add a filter, maybe a high pass filter that I'll do on a very light strength to add some clarity, to add some sharpness, even some brightness, a little bit of shine to their eyes. High pass filters are wonderful if you ever have just a little bit of a blur issue in your images and it's very slight. High pass filters are great for helping with that. We actually have another YouTube video on that, so if you need to go over that again, you can just search it up on our channel and you'll find it. I'm going to make this one a soft light. I'm going to add a mask to this layer, and I'm going to invert it because I don't want to sharpen my entire image. I want to be very careful about where it's going. So I'm going to grab a white brush. Just again, everything is off here. There's been nothing added as of right now, but these eyes are really important. So I'm going to take my soft white brush here, and I'm going to add some of the filter over just the eyeballs. Now this is going to sharpen them. It's going to brighten them a little bit. It's definitely going to make them pop out a little more than they were, and this is important in portraiture. I think we've done okay. I think right now the most in focus thing in this image is the subjects. I think that they are the brightest thing in the image. I think that they look like definitely where your eye wants to go, and they are separated from the background here. So just to show you our beginning picture, where they are shaded and very much so blending in with the background, the sharpest part of the photo right here. And this is our after picture. We're definitely where your eye wants to go is to this gorgeous family, and it separates it a little bit from the background. You can always bring down if you feel like the background could be a little bit darker and you really want the family to pop out more. You could add some darkness to the background, but I think right now we have taken this family that's blending in with their surroundings and we have made them just pop like the beautiful family that they are. So this is how I would edit this image.